Asia Campbell, Busan's teenage civilian diplomat,
안녕하세요. 캠벨 에이샤입니다.
and Busan's mascot Boogie. And let's not forget BFM's Minsu Shin. We're all there to make English fun. Also, don't miss out on English with Busan Ajime Park Sung-won every day at 7 p.m.
부산 아지매.
Starting from February the 19th, join our fresh journey with these new programs.
The time is now 7 o'clock.
Antsy teenage years, the so-called quarter-life crisis. What about midlife crisis? You know, the challenges, they just keep on coming. And a lot of these ups and downs are also tied to your job, with one becoming a cause for the other, or maybe vice versa. But while the older generations stick to the notion of staying at one job for maybe the entirety of their respective careers, the younger generation no longer sees things that way. So is this their quarter-life crisis or crises panning out? Or is the way we work changing for good? Two questions. I'm Catherine. This is Morning Wave in Busan on Thursday, February 15th on befm, 부산영어방송. Good morning, wavers out there. I hope you're all doing well. And if you're joining me at 7:01 in the morning, well, you early birds, you know what they say, early birds get the worm. Well, today we're going to begin our discussion with talk regarding angst-filled teenage years. And if you're an adult, I'm sure you've, had a couple of those years. Maybe you're guilty of this, door slamming. Or how about this? The post-college quarter-life crisis upon entering the so-called real adult world. Some of you may have experienced or maybe are on the way to a midlife crisis, oh no, which could signal the beginning of a second chapter to your life. And when you're applying for jobs, you think getting a job will solve everything, only to find out it really doesn't. According to a survey among some 1,200 workers, over 85% experienced a career crisis at some point. So this came during the first year on the job for almost a quarter of all people, followed by people who experienced this in their second or third years on the job. So what caused young people in their first 3 years to grow so disillusioned with their respective jobs? Well, the biggest reason was low wages, followed by never-ending work and workplace relationships. How do you get out of this rut, though? That's the big question, I think, because nearly 40% left to look for another job. Others found various other outlets, finding joy outside of work, and using their vacation time to kind of refresh, recharge their energy. So that's what we're talking about today as our overall theme. So that takes us to our text topic already today. Are you ready? Here we go. If you could talk to yourself maybe 10, 20 years ago when you're on your first full-time job, what would you tell your younger self? I don't know. Hang in there maybe? Or get out. No, I'm kidding. Well, maybe, not really kidding. Run as far and as fast as you can. What would you tell yourself? What kind of advice would you give? 자, 10년, 20년 전, 신입생활 시절 나에게 해주고 싶은 말은 안 이랬으면 좋겠는데요. Like, 도망가. 좀 더 버텨. 아니면 눈치 좀 챙겨라. What would you tell your younger self, not to others, but to yourself now that you've lived 10 years, 20 years beyond that very first job? I'm sure you have some good advice you could give to your younger self. You can send in your messages to BFM's live stream, live chat on YouTube, also pound 9050. That's going to cost you 101. You can reach me for free on Kakao Talk or our app comment board. It is Thursday already, my goodness, because we have, kind of a shortened work week. We have Lydia coming in for Beyond the Headlines and Han with City Insights. We also have a special interview. So today for our special interview, we're going to focus on the rising political violence here in South Korea. As you know, the April parliamentary elections are coming up real quick in about 2 months' time. And as you know, a lot of the headlines for the past couple months have been political violence enacted upon sitting lawmakers. So we're going to talk about that. Is it a trend? Well, we're going to find out in hour number 2. Anyhow, I'll be back with today's headlines for now. It is now 7:05, and this is today's headlines. South Korea and Cuba forge formal diplomatic ties. South Korea established diplomatic relations with Cuba on Wednesday local time, its mission to the United Nations said, in a surprise announcement that could pose a setback to North Korea that has long boasted brotherly ties with a Latin America country. Government renews calls for restraint over med school quota hike. The health ministry yesterday renewed its call for trainee doctors to avert collective action in protest of a plan to boost seats at medical schools, while a major business lobby of doctors vowed to block the plan at any cost. President Yoon postpones visit to Europe. President Yoon Suk-yeol has postponed his visit to Germany and Denmark planned for next week after considering various factors, the presidential office said yesterday. Ex-fiancé of Olympic fencing medalist gets 12-year prison sentence. A Seoul court sentenced Chun Chung-jo, the scandal-ridden former fiancé of Olympic fencing medalist Nam Hyun-hee, to 12 years in prison yesterday on fraud and forgery charges. Israel vows action against Hamas and Rafah amid global calls for restraint. Israel pressed ahead with an offensive against Hamas and Rafah, the last refuge for displaced Palestinians in southern Gaza, after allowing civilians to vacate the area, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Wednesday local time. And these are today's headlines. It's now time to check in with our writer Dawan. She's in the studio for Busan Updates. Happy Thursday already.
Yeah, good morning.
Yes. Well, I know you're quite young. You're still in your 20s. But if you could talk to your younger self, let's say 5 years, maybe 10, but probably 5 years. What would you tell your younger self about the job, being on the job? Like, would you have any advice?
So imagining that I'm from 10 years later, I would like to say that every experience is meaningful and you learn a lot from anything you do, and what you've learned will become a part of you to make you a better person in the end.
Oh, that's so positive. That's really, really great to hear. All right. Our first update. There's been a couple subway breakdowns recently, and this is leading to concerns about subway safety overall.
Yes, subways on Line 1 stopped on February 2nd and 11th. On the 11th at 8:20 p.m., the subway going towards Tade Station stopped due to a shortage of momentum when it was trying to depart Busan Station. The subway had to let passengers off at Seomen Station, and the subways were delayed by about 9 minutes. This particular car first went into operation in 1988, which means it had been in operation for 36 years. And the age of the trains has been the cause of many breakdowns.
Yes, and so there have been multiple breakdowns on the subway, so tell us about that.
So according to reports, as of last year, there had been 71 subway breakdowns in the past 5 years. And the number goes up to 73 2023, including the latest incidents. So Busan Metro is replacing its aged subways, but that will take until 2026.
I see. So I guess we're going to have to, practice caution and be a little patient. All right, moving on, let's talk about Busan's tourism.
You've probably noticed that we're getting our international travelers back in Busan. Last year, some 1.8 million foreign visitors came to Busan, and the Busan Tourism Organization, BTO, announced that this figure is about 67% of the pre-COVID numbers, but it is a 207% increase from the year before. While the recovery rate is slow, Busan City is becoming a more prominent travel destination in Korea. Of all foreign visitors to Korea last year, 16% came to Busan, which is an uptick from the past. And Japanese tourists accounted for the highest figure, followed by Taiwanese and American visitors.
Interesting. So what's the goal for this year?
So the BTO's goal for this year is 2.13 million foreign visitors. They will come up with different strategies suited to different markets. For example, the Chinese market has been shifting from large groups to individual travelers, and Taiwanese and Hong Kong travelers have been showing an interest in the southern region, and K-pop tourism is still hot in Japan.
I see. Well, if it's going to get our local economy back on track, we should definitely be welcoming of tourists. All right, next, Haeundae District has begun the process to tear down the street carts on the beach. We've been talking about this.
Yes, we've been following the story of street carts along Haeundae Beach. The district and the business people agreed to take down the structures last year after years of illegal operation that the district had turned a blind eye to. However, the business people had asked for another year of operations, citing their age and recovery from COVID. But the district says that they've given plenty of prior notice. They have started to send out official notices for demolition, and after this, the district will send out official orders to return the property to its original state. If the businesses don't voluntarily withdraw by that point, the district will begin forced eviction, and the demolition will be done by this spring.
Well, I hope it doesn't get to that, to forced eviction for the vendors there. All right, lastly, I hear you have some good news for pet owners in Western Busan.
Yes, Western Busan is getting a dog park. This is the first case in Busan where a local university and the local government will be working together for this purpose. Sasang District announced that they will be forming a dog playground and a walking trail within 사상근린 Park in Gwaebab-dong. The playground will be 2,500 square meters and the walking trail about 1.5 kilometers long. The district office will sign a memorandum of understanding with the Gyeongnam College of Information and Technology and Silla University to do this. And these schools have pet-related majors, so they have the necessary students and infrastructure for this project, and it has the potential for job creation as well. The pet park will also have different play areas based on the size of the dog, as well as expert trainers and management nearby.
Sounds good. So if you're in Western Busan, you might want to go check that out with your pet. Thank you, Nawan, for the updates. Now it's back to you, the waivers for the text topic. If you could talk to your younger self. Younger self meaning, I don't know, it depends. If you're really young, maybe 5 years, but maybe 10 to 20 years ago, you're on your first job. What would you tell yourself? What advice would you give? Well, assuming you liked your first job, you might say, hey, hang in there. You're doing well. If you really, really disliked your first job, you might say, hey, it's time to get out of there, like right now, stat. So any advice you would give to your younger self, 10년, 20년 전, 신입생활 시절 나에게 해주고 싶은 말은? Whether it's good or bad, let us know. Here is Nawan with the traffic and weather.
Good morning, everyone. Here's the traffic and weather for this hour. The roads are mostly clear this morning with congestion on 서동로 from Kumsa intersection to Busan Bugok Post Office. It is moving slow on Luno Samsungdaero from Myeongji interchange to Shino Bridge. Likewise, it is a little bit backed up on Hwangryongdaero from Munjeon intersection to Pomnaekor intersection. And with the roads slippery due to last night's rain, please drive safe. Switching over to the weather, current temperatures are averaging 13 degrees Celsius in Busan, and afternoon highs will go up to 16 degrees. The weather conditions will be similar to yesterday, as the sky will be mostly cloudy, with rain expected around 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. The expected amount of rain is 5 to 10 millimeters. So keep that in mind when heading out today. That's all for now. See you in the second hour.
Check this out.
This is Morning Wave in Busan.
Everybody, wait a minute.
This is Morning Wave.
Morning Wave.
You are listening to
Morning Wave.
Morning Wave in Busan.
What show is this?
This is Morning Wave in Busan.
Here we go. Morning Wave in Busan.
It's time for News Digest. We have Haley in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
You grew overnight.
I did. Guys, I'm growing finally. Took 3 decades. But
The camera angles change every day. And I want to give a shout out to our engineer because he does such a great job.
He does.
Setting up the cameras.
and we're so picky. I'm like, can you make sure that
like
I
1
look
degree
good?
down,
Yeah,
1
just
degree
like
to the
a
left.
tiny bit, yeah.
Yeah, you got to deal with the women in the morning. Anyhow, so today we're talking about, what you would tell your younger self. And I know a lot of people may have heard about like Ihuri. She went to her alma mater.
I think so, yeah.
And gave like a commencement speech, right? And so that's kind of like the talk of the town.
She was very honest. She used
I
a
love that
term
about
that
her,
I
though.
don't think we're allowed to use on public air, but it's basically just, forge your own road. Don't
Yes.
listen to what others say.
Don't listen to the naysayers and negativity, right? Well, what would you say to your younger self?
It built me to whatever mistakes I made, built me to who I am today, yada, yada, yada. But young Haley, read the room.
Read the room.
God, when you're at Peshik, pick up the tongs and flip the meat and grill it, and don't just sit there while the older coworkers
what you
grill
tell
it for
yourself?
you. Yeah, because it's happened. So I went to my first Peshik, and not here, but me having been, 24 and having just come back from the States, didn't understand the conventions. So I just seriously sat there so doe-eyed. Like I was just
sitting.
I just sat there waiting for the meat to
be served.
to be served to me by which is whatever.
Right.
I am a staunch believer that whoever's good at it should do it.
Yes.
Because it's meritocracy.
Right.
But at least
Flip the
try.
meat,
At least
Haley.
reach for it. Yeah.
I like that.
The meat, Haley.
That's so practical, though. All right. We're going to jump into our first bit of news. We're going to begin with North Korea's latest provocation yet again.
Right. So yesterday morning, North Korea fired several cruise missiles into the east coast around Wonsan area. And according to the South Korean Joint Chiefs, they detected missiles around 9 a.m. and strengthened their monitoring and vigilance, therefore, because of that. And they've been closely working with the U.S. for any further provocations. If you're keeping count, this is North Korea's 5th cruise missile launch just this year.
Already.
And a military source says this frequent testing, it shows that North Korea is trying to confirm the stability of their missile system and also increase target accuracy. And at the same time, it's not just for internal weapons testing. This may be a showcase to sell their weapons to Russia. So this then poses further concerns for the international community because we've already seen evidence that North Korea provided weapons for Russia to use in their war against Ukraine.
Right. And, in such instances, the South Korea ROK U.S. alliances is crucial. And this ties into the upcoming U.S. presidential election coming up in November, as the newly elected commander-in-chief could very well change the nature of this alliance.
Right. So then we're talking about Donald Trump, who has been very outspoken about rethinking relationships, maybe even reshaping them with traditional allies that throw conventions into question, let's just say. So most recent case involved NATO allies and him directly saying letting Russia do whatever the blank it wants to do to those countries who don't pay the bill to NATO. But then this attitude could very well transfer over to the Korean peninsula.
Right.
Because if you remember, during his first term, Trump did already consistently call for South Korea to take a heavier financial burden to have U.S. troops stationed here. And actually, recently, former Trump Chief of Staff John Kelly told CNN that Trump thinks that NATO is meaningless, or at least he did during the first term, and he was actually adamantly against stationing troops in South Korea and Japan.
Oh.
So this election is still months off, but conventionally during the second term, which it would be for either Trump or Biden,
Right.
presidents do show kind of their truer colors because they don't have to worry about re-elections again. So for South Korea, it's important to really prepare for both scenarios.
Geopolitics. I mean, either you get it or you don't. Let's move on to some domestic issues. This conventional divide in university education has kind of been natural sciences versus liberal arts. It's been that way. But nowadays, it's like, basically, are you going to go to med school versus, am I not going to go to
Everything
med school?
else.
Yes.
Right?
Etc.
So it's kind of become the end-all be-all for students.
Yes.
And, these cutting-edge technology-related majors from top universities, which were kind of seen as the dream, they're losing students to medical schools. And these are majors that actually have affiliations and contracts with top corporations, and students usually get guaranteed jobs in those companies.
Yes.
So, for example, we're talking about the Yonsei University System Semiconductors Engineering School. It had 23 out of 25 of its accepted students drop out. That's 23 out of 25.
That's
so only
like
2
90%,
remained.
right.
And they went to another university. And this major has a contract with Samsung Electronics. And the students who make it into the scholarship student program, they're guaranteed a spot at the company as a researcher after they graduate. So this
Wow.
it's a guaranteed, top corporation job.
Yes.
They're not having it. Also, Korea University's communications technology major had 7 out of its 10 accepted students, so 70% drop out. They too have a contract with Samsung Electronics, and the list goes on and on and on. And experts speculate that most of these students either got accepted to Seoul National University's engineering school or most likely medical schools.
And there's a saying that goes these days, it's basically, even if it's not a, what we consider in Korea, a top tier university.
Or even an Inseoul University's medical school.
They'll just go.
It trumps
regional university.
everything, right.
Exactly. So while we're on the topic of universities, with the decline in population, the Education Ministry is looking into cutting back in the number of education university admissions quota, right?
Right. So this is a very stark reflection of our current society and population makeup. With aging society, you need more doctors. So medical student quota goes up. Aging society, we don't really have students. So education university quota goes down, or at least that's what the Education Ministry is trying to do as they propose reducing admissions quota for national education universities for the year 2025 by about 20%. So this is based on the judgment that the number of newly hired elementary school teachers is on the decline every single year. So the ministry's position is to cut down on the newly hired teachers from 3,561 last year to as low as 2,600 by 2027. They did try to implement this cut last year. However, they faced oppositions from presidents of these national universities. So this time, the ministry is trying to say this isn't a directive, it's not an order, but a proposal for these universities, education universities, to start discussing the matter.
I see. So that's kind of what's happening in the education sphere. Now we're going to go international for the biggest election this year. And it's not necessarily the U.S., right?
No, we're talking about the biggest in terms of literal size and population. So Indonesia, which is the third largest democracy in the world, it held its presidential elections on Wednesday local time. So why this election is important? Well, domestically, Indonesia is a fairly young democracy. Think kind of South Korea in the early 2000s. So Indonesia left their military regime in the late 90s. So it's about 20 years into its democracy. It is also internationally an important presence in Indochina, especially in the rivalry between U.S. and China.
Right.
Excuse me. So why it's so massive? Well, it covers 3 time zones, 820,000 polling stations, and 205 million voters.
Right.
It's also incredibly young, the country itself. Over half the voters are under the age of 40. So interestingly, this is also one of the shortest elections. All of these 205 million voters, they have to vote within a 6-hour time block unless you're out of the country.
6 hours?
6 hours. And, we get early voting, 2 days of early voting, and our population is, not even close. So it not only elects the next president, but also members of parliament, local council. So 20,000 offices were up for grabs in this election, with 260,000 candidates running.
Yes.
And because it's such a young demographic, a lot of campaigning took place over TikTok. Of all places.
Goodness. So
and,
different.
if you've ever been on the short form video platforms, it's a minute. So what kind of message are you going to get out there? Not much. There was criticism that these short form videos were all about exposure and dancing as opposed to platforms and messages.
Yeah, substance. So what do we know about the results?
Well, exit polls are in and they show Defense Minister Prabowo Subianto as the winner. He has over 57% of the votes. So the 72-year-old has the support of the current president, Joko Widodo, who's still widely popular despite 10 years in office. However, Subianto himself is a polarizing figure who has a complicated human rights abuse history, or at least allegations. So he was a former special forces commander under the military dictator, and he faced allegations of having ordered abductions and tortures of student activists during Indonesia's occupation of East Timor. He's never been convicted, and he denies the allegations. Also, his running mate, the vice president, is also under controversy because he is Joko Widodo's son. So there is a speculation of the family trying to build a political dynasty.
Right.
So official results are not in. They'll be announced over a month of counting on March 20th, and they have to be confirmed by the Constitutional Court. In the meantime, it's going to be a tumultuous month if history has an indication, because candidates can lodge objections, which they often do, and there are often protests and even violent outbreaks.
Well, we'll keep an eye on the situation there. But thanks for covering all the news, and we'll check in with you in hour number 2. Thank you, Haley.
See you in a bit.
And with that, let's get to our first song. Here is Celebration by Kool and the Gang.
A celebration to last throughout the years. So bring your good times and your laughter too. We gon' celebrate your party with you. Come on now. Celebration. Let's all celebrate and have a good time. Celebration. We gon' celebrate and have a good time. It's time to come together. It's up to you. What's your pleasure? Everyone around the world, come on! It's a celebration. It's a celebration. Celebrate good times, come on. Let's celebrate. We're gonna have a good time tonight. Let's celebrate. It's alright. We're gonna have a good time tonight. Let's celebrate. It's alright, baby. We're gonna have a good time tonight. Let's celebrate. It's alright. We're gonna have a good time tonight. Let's celebrate. It's alright. It's a celebration. Celebrate good times, come on. Come on and celebrate tonight. 'Cause everything's gonna be alright. Let's celebrate. Celebrate good times, come on.
Welcome back, everybody. It's now 7:29 on this Thursday morning, and we're talking about careers and how many people grew disillusioned with their careers within the first 3 years on the job. You know, on the other hand, more and more young people are not seeking a specific career, but staying in what they call the gig economy. The Japanese call this the freeters, and that's a portmanteau of free plus workers. So it's the term freeter. Prito has found a way into the South Korean vernacular as well, with the term having gone up by 145% in online searches. Have you heard of this? Prito. There are many influencers who show their lives kind of unburdened by long-term jobs, skipping from part-time to part-time job, and finding happiness within this lifestyle. Many younger people, millennials and Gen Z, will see this in a positive light, with 71% agreeing that this is a good lifestyle. About 50% said that they would be willing to live such a lifestyle, especially attracted to the freedom it could give them. Experts also say that this is a statement about the larger labor market, with a reduction in quality jobs that make part-time gigs a more attractive option. Things have definitely changed, especially since the pandemic, I think especially with how people think about their jobs. It's not like a lifelong thing anymore. It's more about finding that balance, striking that balance, whatever it may be for you on a personal note. And back to our text topic for today. If you could talk to yourself, let's say 10, 20 years ago, when you were at your very first job, what would you say? Would you give words of encouragement like, hang in there? Or maybe you would just say, you know what? This isn't a good place. Get out while you can. 자, 10년, 20년 전 신입생활 시절 나에게 해주고 싶은 말은 뭐예요? I hope it's something good, but it could be something not so great. Well, I would tell myself, I'll go first. I would tell myself, I won't say it was a first full-time job, but my first office part-time job. I was working a part-time job when I was in university, and I would tell myself, learn how to say no. I think that's valuable. Sometimes you can't always just say yes, yes, and kind of like ne all the time. To a certain extent, it's expected of you, but I would tell my younger self, it's okay to say no in a polite but firm way. So that's what I would say, because I think I just kind of bent over backwards trying to please my boss. And for our younger listeners, you know, you can tell us about your days back in high school or university. What would you tell your younger self? And that's what we're going on today. Junwon Waver says, when you get to work, don't forget to stay tuned to BEFM. That's what he would say to his younger self. So thank you for that shout out. All right, I'll be back with our hot clip. The hot clip that I picked for you today, it goes hand in hand with kind of what we're talking about, the younger generation, because apparently, at least in the United States, Gen Z, we're talking about the generation born after 1997, appears to be less enamored by the prospect of driving. And that's definitely a big change. Let's listen to the clip from NBC News.
Getting a driver's license may not feel like a ticket to freedom for a lot of teens and young adults like it used to.
Offhand, I'd say you failed.
Failed? Hoping to avoid moments like that, less and less of Gen Z, roughly defined as people born between 97 and 2010, are on the roads.
I'm from New Orleans, which is sort of notorious for having bad drivers. I don't want to put myself in this situation.
Today, just 25% of 16-year-olds have any kind of driver's license. Compare that to nearly 3 decades ago when that number was more than 40%. Why do all of that when you have things like public transportation, ride sharing, and food delivery apps?
The modern accessibility for getting rides and all of that has sort of balanced out the fact that I don't have a license.
It's also part of some broader shifts we're seeing among Gen Z. They're drinking less.
I know the influence, I know the impact, and I know the vibes.
Sleeping earlier, and across social media, viral content focused on staying in more, self-care, and staying home.
No, because I've got a plan.
What do you mean?
You'll find out.
Why? Part of it may have to do with the fact that their coming of age was interrupted.
Many of these young adults really kind of finished middle school or high school in the pandemic where everything shifted to online. So in real life, kind of interactions seemed less important.
They're spending a lot of their time glued to their phones. Just about half of teens say they're online almost constantly, double that from 2015, according to a recent Pew study. In some cases, dramatically changing how they socialize, according to health officials. Another part, finances. 85% of Gen Z citing one or more barriers to achieving financial success. One expert citing a financial hierarchy when it comes to spending. Maybe less on a focus on getting a car and paying insurance and more on groceries and paying off student loans.
So when I was listening to that clip, I was thinking in my head the whole time, that's kind of sad. I'm talking about the factors that might be driving Gen Z into not driving. I mean, if it's a personal choice, like, for example, climate change, I don't want to contribute to that, or other reasons, but it seems like it might not just be that. Back in the day, a latte, right? Back in the day, when I was 16, it was like people were like, I am getting my license on my 16th birthday, and that's what everybody did, but apparently not. Things have definitely changed, and this was your hot clip for today.
Stay tuned. You're listening to Morning Wave in Busan.
It's now time for Lydia and Beyond the Headlines. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's Thursday.
It's Thursday.
I mean, I'm so happy because, this week with the long lunar New Year, I mean, it seems like ages ago. We had a short week.
It's been 2 days.
Hey, you're liking the short work week, right?
Yes.
Hey, our text topic. What would you tell your younger self? You're welcome to write a how do you say in Korean? 영상 편지 to yourself.
Oh no.
What would you say
I don't know
to
if
yourself?
I'm ready for that this morning.
Yes.
But if I would say to my 10-year-old self that I should
10-year-old self?
probably
because you're 20, right?
Eat less candy.
Eat less candy.
Save some money. No, I'm just kidding. Be kinder to my parents.
Really?
Because I was a difficult child. I think I was kind of a difficult child.
What do you mean by difficult? When we say difficult, it's in air quotes.
Temperamental and emotional, and I would never hold things back, and I would just be brutally honest. Kids are like that, but I think now, in retrospect, I was a difficult child to raise.
I'm having all these thoughts in my head because I was the total opposite. Maybe I should have been
Are you a difficult
rebel.
adult now? Just kidding.
I am.
What happened to you?
I think I was too nice.
That's
in my
sweet.
entirety of my entire childhood, I never talked back to my mom once.
Oh, I love that.
But I held it inside.
Oh no,
It was festering.
that's not good.
And then she caught me like trampling on her blouse when I think it was 19.
Wait,
It fell on the ground. It fell from the, coat tree. It fell from the coat tree, and then it's conveniently on the floor. So I was like, "Yay, I'm gonna trample on it." And then she walked in as I was like stepping all over it, and I was just like,
Uh-oh, this looks bad.
Yeah, that was my one little difficult moment. But okay, well, we're gonna get to our segment beyond the headlines. What do you have for us?
Yeah, so I am actually a little bit tired this morning because I was up last night scrolling my phone, looking at all the fascinating photos of people at Fashion Week in New York. Did you know that was happening?
Well, I've been getting no wonder this morning they're like, I almost said the brand name. Tom Thing is the fashion show is online. I was like, oh, it is?
Yeah, interesting, right?
Right.
And as I was walking in, Haley was saying that, oh my God, I've not seen you wearing actual like clothes in forever. And I was like,
what do you
"Oh."
mean?
I was like, I knew she was gonna make fun of me. Like I told her because I'm always in leggings and sweatpants.
Because that's kind of like your work.
Clothing.
I mean,
it's just like the best thing ever. But
yes,
sometimes I wear regular clothes.
Yes.
Are you like into fashion as well? It's like kind of a pretentious question. I don't know. I'm sorry.
No. It's a perfectly good question. Yes, even yesterday I went to peruse some stuff at the local,
the
stores, right? I perused, and then I just got really bored. And I was just like, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah, I think nowadays
COVID just killed everything.
Yeah,
my
definitely.
Desire to like shop. I don't know.
And we have like nowhere to really go, anyways.
Right, exactly.
But the big 4 fashion weeks are happening.
Yes,
starting now. The most 4 prestigious ones that people consider are New York, London, Milan, Paris.
Yes,
and they're happening throughout February and March. And don't forget, we also have Seoul Fashion Week.
That's right.
Each of these fashion weeks showcases the latest trends and designs from top designers and brands. They draw attention from fashion enthusiasts, industry professionals, artists, media worldwide. From the iconic runways to the exclusive after parties, Fashion Week isn't just about clothing. It's supposed to be a celebration of creativity, self-expression, and pushing the boundaries of style. But because Fashion Weeks are highly publicized events with a significant cultural impact, beyond the shimmering lights and camera flashes, there are some complexities to this extravagant affair.
Right, and like everybody wants to know, like, what is it? They call it front row.
Yeah,
right. Like who's sitting in the front row?
Yeah,
I mean, it's a big deal, right? But what about in Seoul? Don't we have like Seoul Fashion Week as well?
Yes. So fall 2024 edition of Seoul Fashion Week actually just happened earlier this month, from February 1st to February 5th.
Okay. And by the way, some people are like fall, winter. Yeah, they always do it like one season ahead because you want to know what's going to be trendy for the upcoming season, not what's trendy right now. Were there a lot of celebrities who attended?
Yes, celebrities definitely turned some heads on the quote-unquote blue carpet. K-pop stars in particular had a big presence, including New Jeans, who served as the ambassadors of the event. Tomorrow X Together were also there. TXT, you know better than me. Alongside designer Yoni P, drag queen artist Nana. Also, Mayor of Seoul, Oh Se-hoon, was there. Although a lot of people are saying that this year's Seoul Fashion Week was quieter than the usual. There was apparently some calendar shift that happened. So like last year, it happened in September instead of October, and this year it happened a month earlier in February instead of in March. And according to many people in the fashion industry, the changes came with some challenges as well. Apparently the weather in February is so much colder comparison to March. There were generally just fewer people in cool clothes sort of like participating in the events.
I mean, but think about it. It is still awfully cold. It's still winter for us. But then to be, showing up, you're not going to show up in winter clothing.
Right.
This is like,
yes.
right?
Yeah. And not to mention that, mini skirts, low-rise mini skirts, and
Micro
super
minis.
cropped denim jackets,
low-rise, extra destroyed pants with
Right.
lots of holes. Those things they were still out there. But though it seems like there has been some sort of significant change in the venue for fashion events as well. So before all of these events happen at Dongdaemun Plaza, DDP, which has been a landmark in local fashion.
Sure.
But this year, apparently 1/3 of the events moved to S Factory in Seongsu, which is also a cool venue. And the change in the location was apparently a cool opportunity for people to try different area while they're attending the shows.
Yes.
But nonetheless, feelings were mixed about the changes among industry insiders. Apparently, this year's event featured only about 21 brands, which was a
That's
record
low,
low.
yeah.
There were 30 brands at the show for spring 2024, and pre-pandemic there were over 50 brands.
Wow.
The record low number of brands feature has left some people feeling underwhelmed and questioning the direction of the event. And in response to that, Seoul government, which actually funds and organizes Seoul Fashion Week,
Yes.
confirmed that judging standards have actually become stricter for local brands because they want to make sure that the event is less like a cultural festival, but more like a bigger international business. In fact, Korean fashion is gaining much popularity abroad, particularly in Southeast Asia.
Yes, yes. Well, it does seem that the fashion industry has a bigger impact on our culture and society than we think, because some people might say, oh, I'm not really into fashion. But I mean, who hasn't like gone shopping for clothes at one point in their lives? And we don't want to look outdated.
Yes, definitely.
Maybe not like that fashion
Definitely
forward,
not
but still
us.
not outdated, right?
Yeah, and because of that exact reason, the fashion industry also comes with a lot of baggage. Controversy and the fashion industry often go hand in hand for several reasons.
Sure.
Yeah, so one of the most interesting aspects to think about on that topic is how some designer brands do their marketing strategies and how they often use controversy through shocking or provocative campaigns to generate buzz. And sadly, it backfires when it really crosses the line.
When it's too much.
Yeah, so for instance, the Spanish fashion house released an ad campaign 2 years ago of children holding teddy bears in bondage harnesses, which is like BDSM. It's like some sort of sexual
And I love
fetish
that
thing.
brand, and I was so disappointed.
Yes, which, led people to think the brand was condoning pedophilia and child exploitation.
It looked bad.
Yeah, it just looked bizarre. And since then, the things have not been the same for that brand at all.
And I mean, I'm not the only one. People around me, they're like, I used to love this brand, carry
it
the
was
bag.
so popular.
But like after that, I was just like, whoa.
Now it's like the ick. People are saying the ick. It's giving the
Yeah.
ick. Are you like sort of like, I don't know, is there like a particular brand or person that crosses your mind when it comes to controversy?
Oh yeah, one that pops out like instantly. I don't know, what does he go by these days? Is it Ye, Kanye?
Oh my gosh,
Kanye,
yeah,
what?
you're so. I think he like was Ye, and then like, is he still Ye? I don't know.
I don't know.
Who knows?
Kanye, whatever his name is. Yeah.
He's definitely an intriguing case when it comes to the fashion controversy, right? As you may already know, he is one of the people who successfully transitioned from music to fashion. He initially gained fame as a rapper, right? Producer in the U.S. When he first came out and said that he was designing clothes and shoes, partner with this brand that starts with the letter A.
Adi Dang.
Adi Dang, right?
Yes.
And this was long before he said he was running for president in 2020 U.S. election.
Yes.
Some critics within the fashion world were very skeptical about that, seeing how exclusive they are. That said, in 2020 he became a billionaire because of fashion. Fast forward to October 2022, Paris Fashion Week, he revealed his brand Yeezy, and this is when people knew that he liked making bold statements, be outspoken, and take unconventional actions. Little did they know he was going to go on stage wearing a shirt that said "White Lives Matter," which is like horrific for many reasons. Yes, and he is no stranger to controversy and pushing radical ideas forward, right? But eventually, this Adi Dang brand dropped him because of all the radical things that he was saying to the public. But allegedly, he was also very, very difficult to work with. He was doing a lot of difficult stuff. And last year, the brand ended up selling remaining of his stuff and donating some of the profit to charities that help people affected by what he said.
The thing is that with him, it's hard to, like, let's say, judge him per se, because according to his ex-wife, he has bipolar disorder.
Yes.
So I don't want to judge, like, someone's mental state. On the other hand, he has said some really horrific things.
Yes.
Things that are very anti-Semitic.
Yes. And he has all the resources and everything in the world to get help.
Yes.
Some people don't, but he can. So, yeah, it's interesting.
Well, lastly, let's take a look at the trend we're most looking forward to in the upcoming weeks in London, Paris, and Milan.
Yes, so the new thing that we're most looking forward to is renewed perception of beauty.
Oh.
So the fashion industry has long been, criticized for narrow, unrealistic beauty ideals that basically exclude everyone and make everyone feel so bad about themselves.
Right.
But that is slowly but surely changing. Then in this year's Seoul Fashion Week, for example, the brand Ajo by Ajo, every single male model on the runway weren't models, but just regular people who happened to be very tatted up.
Okay.
They looked far from what fit the beautiful standard of modern beauty, right? But the intention was to make sure they looked more like outsider, but they were also still beautiful in their own way.
Okay.
And New York Fashion Week, that's happening right now. I think today is the last day. Designer Kalina Strada had a runway show titled Stronger that highlighted inner feminine power. And she had models that were pregnant, women holding an infant, like on the runway, women in a wheelchair, plus size models, women who had more of a quote unquote beefy silhouette,
meaning
she
like
was very muscular, which
Yes.
is really cool. Also women of different color and different age, anything but typical tall, even toned women.
Right. I
Which
mean,
is
if you're not like a 00
or 000.
right, or whatever
Yes.
the new, thinnest thin size is.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is also beautiful, but
But
not that particular show.
not the entire
Yes.
world is
Yeah.
00 though, right?
Definitely not.
Well, thank you so much for bringing us this news take on fashion, because it was definitely eye-opening, and it's good to look on what we should be more or better aware of. But thanks for covering that, and we look forward to next week as well. Thank you, Lydia.
Yeah, sorry, I almost said happy Valentine's Day.
In the States it is.
Yes.
And if you forgot, today's a good day to, unforget. Let's just put it that way.
All right, see you next week.
Thank you, Lydia. Well, we are today talking about a variety of things, including this text topic where we're talking about talking to your younger self. What would you say if you could kind of wave a wand and talk to your younger self, like they do in K-dramas? What would you say, or what would you advise? One of our waivers. Stop spending money at convenience stores and stop buying clothes. And 오겹살 좋아 waiver says, stop buying clothes. 여기도요. 휴가를 잘 활용해서 travel more often, even in Korea. That's a good one. And she writes, and one more. 그 오빠 왜 보냈어? 글쎄게 왜 보냈어요? Why? Why'd you say goodbye to him? If you could turn back time, maybe you would do it differently. Or flip side, maybe you were in a bad relationship for too long and you would say, get out, kick her or him to the curb quicker. That's also a thing you might be saying to yourself as well. And Leslie, I see you. Happy Valentine's Day from the States. We send you much love as well. All right. We have more coming up in hour number 2, including a little time difference. Special interview is going to go first, and then we have a hand coming up. Hand's going to go first, and then we're going to have special interview. We're going to switch things up a little in hour number 2. Stay tuned for that. And I think I have one more. Dr. Ryu, 말해도 안 들었을 것 알기에 할 말이 없어요. So Dr. Ryu waiver, he says, even if I had something to say, I wouldn't listen. So I'm not going to say anything. There's nothing to say. which is also probably true. We're so stubborn when we're younger, are we not? Anyhow, here's our final song for hour number 1. This is 요르트 그름 by Yunha, and this is requested by 3435 Waver. Enjoy. I'll be back at 8.
숨이 벅차도록 달려왔잖아. We'll never say time's up. 경계의 끝자락 내 끝은 아니니까. 울타리 밖에 일렁이는 무언가 그 아무도 모르는 별일지 몰라. I wanna be there. I'm gonna be there. 벅찬 마음으로 이 궤도를 벗어나. Let's go. 새로운 길에 탐험가. Beyond the road. 껍질을 깨뜨려버리자. 두려움은 이제 꺼도 오로지 나를 믿어. 지금이 바로 time to fly. To the 앞에 끝 또 넘어가. 한계밖에 trip 자리 찾아라. 너의 심장에 쉼없이 피는 꿈. 무모하게도 믿어 난. 누구도 본 적 없는 낯선 우주 속에 겁없이 뛰어들어 fall, fall. 답답한 가슴 안에 불꽃을 피워낼래. Shine and bright. 거쳐 듯이 반짝이던 무언가 꼭 달릴수록 멀어져도 난 좋아. I'll never never give up. I'm getting better. 여정은 이미 시작된 지 오래야. Let's go. 끝이라 생각한 순간 Beyond the road. 너는 세상이란 감싸나. 때로는 느릴 때도 가끔은 지친데도 멈추지 않고 let me fly. To the 앞에 끝 또 넘어가. 한계밖에 trip 자리 찾아라. 너의 심장에 쉼없이 피는 꿈. 무모하게도 믿어 난. 누가 뭐래도 믿어 난. 다치고 망가져 버거워진 항해. 숨 한 번 고르고 이어가면 okay. 그럼 넘어 세상을 내 품에 안을래. To the 앞에 끝 또 넘어가. 한계밖에 trip 자리 찾아라. 너의 심장에 쉼없이 피는 꿈.
Your Breaks to the World. befm 부산영어방송.
안녕하세요. 박보검입니다. 누군가의 행동이 MBTI의 예측대로 흘러갈 때, 레시피대로 만든 음식이 가장 맛있을 때, 요즘엔 이렇게 말한다죠? 와, 이건 진짜 과학이다. 그런데 이 말은 어디서 시작된 걸까요? 침대는 과학입니다. 맞네. 침대는 과학이다. 에이스 침대.
새로워진 다우니. 첫날의 생활을 닮은 향기가 7일 내내 은은하게. 다우니 생활향기 컬렉션. 7일 내내 생활을 닮은 향기. 다우니 생활향기 컬렉션. 부산의 축제 어디까지 즐겨보셨나요? 과거와 현재, 미래가 공존하는 항구도시 부산. 이곳 부산은 계절을 물들이는 다양한 축제로 늘 풍성합니다. 봄의 시작을 알리는 봄꽃 축제부터 부산의 여름을 만끽하는 바다축제, 전 세계 영화인들이 모이는 부산국제영화제와 새로운 시작의 해맞이 축제까지. 부산의 축제는 우리의 열정을 가득 담고 있습니다. 바쁜 일상은 잠시 뒤로 하고 특별한 시간을 선물 받는 바로 이곳 부산에서 우리의 삶은 축제가 됩니다. 축제로 하나 되는 부산. 여러분은 어떤 축제를 기다리시나요? 이 캠페인은 대선공익재단과 bfm 부산영어방송이 함께합니다.
혹시 지금 운전 중이신가요? 어린이 교통사고 피해자 수는 지난 3년 평균 약 9만 명. 특히 어린이 보호구역 안전기준이 강화된 이후에도 어린이 보호구역 내 사고는 지속적으로 발생하고 있습니다. 스쿨존에서는 반드시 시속 30km 이하 서행, 스쿨존 내 불법 주정차 금지, 차량 출발 전 앞뒤 좌우 살피는 습관으로 어린이가 안전한 도시를 만듭니다. 참, 운전 중 휴대전화 사용은 모두에게 위험합니다. 우리 모두를 위한 교통안전, 나부터 실천하면 모두가 안전해집니다. 어린이가 안전하게 뛰어놀 수 있는 부산. 아이 키우기 좋은 도시는 우리 모두의 미래이자 희망입니다. 이 캠페인은 어린이가 안전한 부산을 만드는 은행, B&K 부산은행과 함께합니다.
참 아이러니하죠?
밤새 울어 못 잤는데 방긋 웃는 얼굴에 힘이 나는 아이러니.
음정도 박자도 없지만 그 어떤 노래보다 감동적인 아이러니.
잠깐의 걸음마에도 하루 종일 뛸 듯이 기쁜 아이러니.
세상 힘들지만 세상 행복한 아이러니.
아, 이러니 아이를 키우나 봅니다.
공익광고협의회.
The time is now 8 o'clock.
It's morning.
And what a lovely morning.
Dynamic Busan.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Hello, Chevy.
What show is this?
Hello.
Hello, baby.
Hey, buddy.
Hello, everybody. Live from Korea's dynamic city, this is Morning Wave in Busan.
It is now 8 o'clock, and this is news highlights. South Korea and Cuba forge formal diplomatic ties. South Korea established diplomatic relations with Cuba on Wednesday local time. Its mission to the United Nations said in a surprise announcement that could pose a setback to North Korea that has long boasted brotherly ties with a Latin American country. Although Cuba officially recognized South Korea in 1949, bilateral exchanges were effectively severed after Fidel Castro seized power in a 1959 revolution. The announcement marked a culmination of Seoul's steadfast efforts to build a formal relationship with Cuba and expand its diplomatic foothold in Central and South America on the back of growing cultural and people-to-people exchanges. With formal relationships with Cuba, Syria is the only remaining UN member state with no diplomatic ties with Seoul. Government renews calls for restraint over med school quota hike. The health ministry yesterday renewed its call for trainee doctors to avert collective action in protest of a plan to boost seats at medical schools, while a major business lobby of doctors vowed to block the plan at any cost. Cho Ji-ho, the chief of the Seoul Metropolitan Police Agency, reiterated such warnings during a press briefing yesterday, saying the police will take necessary measures in case of illegal acts beyond the level tolerable by the public. Meanwhile, the Korea Medical Association said its emergency committee will convene a meeting Saturday to map out plans against the planned hike in medical students. President Yoon postpones visit to Europe. President Yoon Suk-yeol has postponed his visit to Germany and Denmark planned for next week after considering various factors, the presidential office said yesterday. The presidential office said that the decision reflected Yoon's need to focus on domestic issues, including the economy, people's livelihoods, and national security, amid a looming strike by doctors protesting the government's decision to raise the medical school enrollment quota and North Korea's continuing provocations. Initially, Yoon was scheduled to visit the two countries for roughly a week next week. No decision has been made on when the visits will be rescheduled. Ex-fiancé of Olympic fencing medalist gets prison sentence. The Seoul Eastern District Court sentenced Chun Chung-jo, the scandal-ridden former fiancé of Olympic fencing medalist Nam Hyun-hee, to 12 years in prison yesterday on fraud and forgery charges. Chun, 28, was charged with swindling a total of about 3 billion won from 27 people under the pretext of investment between 2022 and 2023. The prosecution had concluded that Chun's motive was to finance a luxury lifestyle with ill-gotten money and demanded a 15-year prison term for her. The court sentenced Chun to 12 years behind bars. Meanwhile, Nam is also currently under police investigation after investment fraud victims filed a complaint against her for alleged collusion with Chun, but the fencer denied the suspicions. Israel vows action against Hamas in Rafah amid global calls for restraint. Israel will press ahead with an offensive against Hamas in Rafah, the last refuge for displaced Palestinians in southern Gaza, after allowing civilians to vacate the area, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Wednesday local time. The Israeli leader, who is under growing international pressure to hold off on the planned assault, gave no indication as to when the offensive might take place or where the hundreds of thousands of people now crammed into Rafah might go. As night fell on Wednesday, more than 2,000 Palestinians who had been sheltering in Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis arrived in Rafah after being ordered to evacuate by the Israeli army, residents and some witnesses said. This was News Highlights. It's now time for issue Wagle. We have our Wagler, Haley. She's back.
Hello again.
Yes. Well, we're going to get into this first story. A report that claims that some soccer players in the men's national football team got into a fight, resulting in Son Heung-min hurting his hand. Apparently, I don't know, it was like a finger being dislocated.
Right. So we're trying to move on from the Asian Cup, but we
want to.
Can't. So The Sun, a British tabloid, so let's keep the source in mind.
It's The Sun.
Yes. It reported that a fight broke out during dinner ahead of the match with Jordan during the Asian Cup, and this resulted in, as you said, Son dislocating his finger. So according to the report, some of the younger members of the squad ate dinner quickly, or at least early, so they can go and play ping pong. And The Sun claims that Lee Gang-in was in the group. Captain Son and some of the older members were unhappy with the decision because they were trying to use the dinner as a team bonding experience. An altercation broke out, and well, accounts differ. The Sun said that Son was trying to stop the fight and he injured the finger, but others say that Son Heung-min and Lee Gang-in got into a fight themselves, and that's how the injury happened. Well, that was just a tabloid story until then, but quickly the Korea Football Association confirmed this, that there was an altercation, and that is how Son wound up hurting his finger. And then the story just grew and grew and grew, with Lee Gang-in writing on his social media last night, apologizing publicly for his behavior and not following his older players, he called them Hyung, and said that he'll try to help the older players in the future to make himself into a better player and also a better person.
And the thing is, I mean, I don't know. I have many, many opinions on this. It angered me, really. Do they have to verify it? You know, what is public opinion on this matter?
And that's the thing. Surprisingly, I mean, some people do. Some people say that, is that why, we didn't perform so well?
Right.
But not many people blame the individual players. Interestingly, they are paying attention to how the Korea Football Association, the KFA, responded to this. So I'm going to just read off this one comment that I think encapsulates the general opinion rather nicely. Players, individuals can have fights and differences in opinion, but the KFA uncharacteristically admitted this and quickly at that, contributing to the media attention.
Right.
So while the responsibility for what happened at the Asian Cup lies with the leadership, referring to the KFA leadership and the head coach, this scandal seems to be watering down the situation. And also, if the players are not getting along and fighting, how is the coach not responsible for this? Unquote.
Right. And before this, alleged brouhaha, there have been multiple times where we've seen Son Heung-min and Lee Kang-in. They're obviously close.
They're obviously close.
Right.
And the thing is, sports with all the adrenaline and the competition, you play flag football on the school field and there are shouting matches, but they can patch things up. But for this to be so publicly be out there, that's interesting.
And as one of our 오겹살 좋아 waiver, 축구협회 이건 좀 아닌 것 같은데, It's just a comment that she made. I'll just leave it there.
Many people did make that comment.
All right, let's move on to our next story. A former Dutch prime minister recently died by euthanasia alongside his wife.
Right. This is a very heavy but important story, and there's a trigger warning about assisted suicide. So earlier this month, former Dutch Prime Minister Dries van Acht died in dual euthanasia with his wife, Eugenie. They were both 93 years old at the time. They've been married since 1958. And his foundation released a statement saying that he died hand in hand with his beloved wife. So the Netherlands legalized euthanasia and assisted suicide back in 2002. And since then, more than 8,700 people died by euthanasia in just 2022 alone. And it's also been an increase noted in dual euthanasia, and that's when married couples decide to make that decision together.
Okay.
So a bit of a lingo division. Euthanasia is where a doctor administers a medical measure such as lethal injection directly to the patient to end the life of suffering. Assisted suicide is helping another person end their life, so including providing them with strong sedatives and other forms of drugs.
Right, and so some countries do allow for euthanasia, like we just talked about, or assisted suicide. However, South Korea is not one of those countries. There have been reports, though, of people taking such drugs in Korea as well, though.
Right. So reports confirm the use of smuggling euthanasia drugs from overseas to use on Koreans or Koreans using them. So this is according to the National Forensic Service, which confirmed 10 deaths in the last 5 years where they detected traces of drugs used in Switzerland for euthanasia. And 8 out of these 10 cases were people in their 20s and 30s. So these are, by the way, keep in mind, only cases that underwent autopsy. So if we're counting, unreported cases, we have no idea the extent of this because, in December of 2021, for example, there were over 1,500 tags or posts on social media with euthanasia drugs as the handle. And there are overseas websites that sell these drugs and even have Korean language services on their website.
Yes.
So keep in mind that it is illegal to sell or purchase these drugs. If you sell them, it can result in up to 10 years for prison for violating drug-related laws. Also, there are voices that this euthanasia or assisted suicide being so taboo in South Korean society, that has driven patients in dire situations to these underground black markets. So, by the way, this is, of course, a heavy ethical conundrum, but the Constitutional Court recently did decide to hear a case on doctor-assisted suicide. So we may start the process of a social discussion in Korea after all.
This is such a tough one, euthanasia and assisted suicide. So we're going to just leave it there because we don't want to comment one way or another. It's a tough one. You have to decide for yourself what you think. All right. Next, one celebrity couldn't go to see a movie with his family because a multiplex theater wouldn't accommodate his needs with a wheelchair.
In 2023.
I know,
it's 2024, excuse me, after years of, the subway protests and everything. So we're talking about singer Kang Wol-rae, who posted on social media recently about how he had to leave a movie theater, a multi-complex, alone during the Lunar New Year holidays. So he went to go watch a documentary on the first president, Lee Seung-man, and the theater told him that because the screen was a special screen, and thus had stairs at the entrance, so therefore they couldn't accommodate his wheelchair. And when he asked whether the employees could actually lift the wheelchair to go over the stairs, they said that was a hard no. And then this is, I think, where things got iffy. Asked him whether he could get up for a moment. Okay, keep in mind, so Kang famously, if you're of a certain age, you knew him from the group Clone. He was paralyzed after a motorcycle accident in 2002. But we should note that people who can walk briefly also do use wheelchairs because they have other mobility problems. So let's give the benefit of the doubt there. But under the law and convenience for people with disabilities, performance venues, movie theaters, and libraries must have 1% of their seating made accessible for people with disabilities.
Okay.
But some theaters circumvent this. It's because it's 1%. It doesn't stipulate that every single screen in the theater must have 1% of the seats be wheelchair accessible. So if you have, just for the sake of simple math, 100 theaters, 100 screens, but only one is wheelchair accessible completely, that's still 1%. So, I mean, that's the extreme case, but, theaters do kind of do the math where the total seats add up to 1%, and they just have it at that. The Human Rights Commission is aware of this and issued a recommendation back in 2021 to rectify it. It's still in the works, let's just say. Also, in terms of notice, it would have been nice for the theaters to say on their ticket or on the website that this particular screen is not wheelchair accessible. Apparently, for some multiplexes, you have to click on every single screen to verify this. So the People Power Party, which has been on a campaign to screen this documentary, said that it'll revise the necessary laws, and included leader Han Dong-un said that this is a very strange incident that we shouldn't be able to have to talk about this in this year, but they will set off to rectify it.
All right. Well, lastly, we're going to go to Argentina, where a man was electrocuted while trying to steal high voltage cable. Can you explain?
Right. So this is according to local media stories. A 21-year-old man suffered electric shock in Rosario on February 11th. He was trying to steal a high voltage cable that was buried underground. There was an explosion which burned 90% of his body, and he was taken to the hospital but died 2 days later after multiple organ failures. So a video of this incident has spread over social media, but this speaks volumes about the state of economic conditions in Argentina, which we've previously reported about how the country is seeing a severe economic downturn with massive inflation. And this isn't a singular case. There's been a number of thieves who have been trying to steal metals such as telephone wires and electricity wires to sell off. And therefore, the number of electric shock accidents have also been increasing, with media reporting 95 wire thieves caught in just the area of Rosario last month alone.
Wire thieves.
Yes,
that
it's
is a sad
to that level.
state of events in Argentina. Well, thanks for going over all the hot issues today, and have a good one. We'll check in with you tomorrow. Thank you, Haley.
Have a good day.
And with that, we have Nawan back in the studio, and she's going to tell you what's going on with traffic and weather.
Good morning again, everyone. It is currently 8:16. Here's your update on traffic and weather. The traffic is slowly filling up with congestion on Namhae Expressway from Namsanjeong Subway Station to Nakdong Bridge. It is a little bit backed up on Jungangdaeru from Songgong Junction to Samjeon intersection. Likewise, it is moving slow on Worldcupdaeru from Nammungu intersection to Yeonsan intersection, going both ways. So please drive safe. Jumping over to the weather, the sun is slowly rising with current temperatures averaging 13 degrees Celsius in Busan. Afternoon highs will go up to 16 degrees. However, the skies will be mostly cloudy throughout the day, and showers are expected from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m., seeing 5 to 10 millimeters of rain. So maybe a good idea to pack a small umbrella just in case. That's all for now. Let's hand it back to Catherine.
This is Back in Love by Kim Min-seok and Sam Ryder.
Outside of these walls, worth getting up out of bed anyway. Bless you still haven't cold. Life's like a big empty cage and I'm in it. Keep checking my goddamn phone every minute. Watching movies we started but never finished. I'm drowning my sorrows and raising my spirits. What's the point of leaving the house today? Ain't nothing outside of these walls worth getting up out of bed anyway. Plus you still haven't called. They say you can't turn back the clock. I promise with your fingers crossed. You can't go where the rainbow stops, but hearts can always mend because that's the point I'm trying to prove. Cause I'm still here hung up on you. Nowhere to go and nothing to lose. Tell me what can I do? My life's like a cloud with no silver lining. I just hope somewhere the sun is still shining. What's stopping all of these planets aligning? I know it's dramatic, but I think I'm dying. What's the point of leaving the house today? Ain't nothing outside of these walls worth getting up out of bed anyway. Plus you still haven't called. They say you can't turn back the clock. I promise with your fingers crossed. You can't go where the rainbow stops, but hearts can always mend because what don't they know? I'm chasing my hopes. Can go back in time. I need you in the back of my life. What's the point of leaving the house today? Ain't nothing outside of these walls worth getting up out of bed anyway. Plus you still haven't called. They say you can't turn back the clock. I promise with your fingers crossed. I don't know where the rainbow stops, but hearts can always mend because who says you can't fall back in love? Who says you can't fall back in love? That's why I still believe in us, and no one can stop me from dreaming. Who says you can't fall back in love? What's the point of leaving the house today? Ain't nothing outside of these walls.
Welcome back, everybody. So today we're talking about what you would tell your younger self if you could tell yourself maybe from 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whether it's regarding your first time like really working, your first real job, or maybe if you were still in school, what would you tell your younger self? Like, you know, hang in there. It's okay to say no, like I said, sometimes. What would you say? That's what we're talking about. Dr. Liu, I don't know. Is he being sincere? 부산 영어 방송 모닝 웨이브는 부산 최고의 쇼 이것을 전 세계로 벗어나가야 해요. You had it ready? Our producer, she's so ready. Yes. I get kind of embarrassed, is my face red, of these self-compliments to the show. Anyhow, thank you for that one. All right, I'm going to be back with Haeyeon in just a moment. It's now time for City Insights. We have Haeyeon in the studio. Good morning.
Good morning.
I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great. It's
Yes.
a little muggy out there, but it's warm.
It is definitely.
I'm feeling spring come to us.
Yeah, but don't forget, there's always that like last cold snap, like 보침추위 or whatever they call it,
맞아요.
coming up. But anyhow, I'm going to give you this great opportunity right now and put you on the spot as well. Two birds, one stone. What would you tell your younger self if you had the opportunity to go back and say, hey, I'm going to give you some advice, my younger self? What would you say?
Okay.
Ready?
This is what I would say. 혜연아, 잘 있지? I know you're doing your best, and I know that you're anxious a lot. But remember this. Nobody's thinking about you, actually. Everybody's worrying about themselves. So just do your thing, do your best, but relax. And to bring out the New Yorker in me, so what? Who cares? Just live your life.
Forget about it. Wow. Talk about improv, ad-libbing. Wow, you're on top of your game.
Yeah.
That's really good advice,
Yeah,
though.
just relax. There's no need to be that intense and anxious.
Right. I would tell myself, I was telling you off here, like, you don't need to be a people pleaser all the time, Kat. Not all the time.
Yeah.
And, like, you know, it's okay to be selfish a little bit.
Yeah.
Because when I was younger, I was just like, wanted to please mom, wanted to please dad, please all my teachers, please all my friends. It was just like.
And that causes a lot of, I don't know, for me, it was
much.
anxiety.
Right. All right. We got to get into our first insight, though.
All right. So for our first insight, we're going to get to know some new education and childcare programs of Busan City with the governor of Busan City Office of Education, Mr. Ha Yun-soo. So this was part of the Hope Relay special interviews we had at our show Busan Worldwide to discuss with our leaders the vision and direction of Busan in 2024.
Yes, well, recently our city and, of course, other cities all across Korea, we've been seeing a drastic drop in students due to the population crisis. We're hearing about schools actually shutting down.
Right, it's so unfortunate. So, in fact, the Busan Office of Education has been advocating that one of the most important solutions to overcome this crisis is education. And they've designated this year as the beginning of the entire community to come together and educate every child. So in our first clip, let's hear Governor Ha Yun-soo talk about a new program that provides customized education and care services for all of our students. Let's take a listen.
새로운 학교가 하나 만들어지게 됩니다. 이게 바로 넓은 학교인데요. 넓은 학교는 우리 1학년의 학생들이 오전에 이게 집으로 돌아오게 되면 이 아이를 케어해 줄 사람이 없습니다.
네.
이래서 이건 우리 강력시 교육청에서 이건 책임을 지자. 그래서 1학년에 희망하는 학생들을 우리가 전수조사를 했더니 한 8,800여 명이 돼요. 이게 한 43%가 되는데 우리는 1학년 학생들을 밤 8시까지 전부 케어를 해주기로 했습니다.
네.
그리고 8시까지 케어할 때 방과 후 학습도 들어와가지고 방과 후까지 우리 학습행도 함께 병행을 합니다. 그래서 또 4학년부터 6학년까지는 방과 후 학습을 다양하게 학습행으로 해서 공부를 가르치게 하고 또한 예체능도 할 수 있도록 해서 케어를 하는 이 넓은 학교가 전국에서 17개 시도에서 제일 먼저 선행을 해가고 있습니다.
So he spoke about expanding the operation of after-school Nulbom schools in order to accommodate first to third grade elementary school students. They conducted a survey and about 43% of Busan City elementary school first graders were in need of after-school care, so they decided to take care of them until the night hours. Additional care classes and over 100 community-linked care facility rooms will be added. The lower grade students will engage in reading, play, and sports activities, while the upper grade students will access specialized programs like finance learning through ChatGPT and AI-based mathematics, and these will be facilitated by the local universities and other institutions.
Right, and like the whole, it takes a village or the whole community coming together to take care of our children. I think that's kind of the mentality.
Yeah, definitely. And an important part of that initiative is also providing around-the-clock care. So 24-hour care centers for children have been running at locations like Gupo and Yeongdo, where those are areas that have a bit of a child care gap. Initially, they started operating these centers by making the best use of existing facilities like libraries and book cafes. So let's hear Mr. Ha talk about how this program is progressing and what the parents' reactions have been like. Let's take a listen.
그렇습니다. 학부모님들이 야간에 질병 검진과 또 치료 기간 또 맞벌이 부분 경우에 야간 근무라든지 긴급한 사태가 벌어졌을 때는 아이를 맡길 데가 없지 않습니까? 이런 경우를 대비해서 긴급 돌봄 24시를 저희들이 7개를 개소해서 운영을 하고 있습니다. 그런데 그 중에서 그 구포가 제1호 개점을 했는데요. 구포는 지금 이제 15명 정도 수용을 하는데 지금 거의 10,000원에 가까운 정도로 지금 인기가 있습니다. 학부모님들께서 이제 이걸 촘촘하게 희망 사다리를 놔서 안심하고 아이를 케어해 줄 수 있도록 하는 게 굉장히 중요하다 하는 의미에서 긴급 돌봄이 되겠죠. 이 부분은. 그래서 지금 이제 올해까지 30개소를 촘촘하게 만들어갈 계획입니다.
He explained that parents may be unable to find someone to take care of their kids due to, there are always emergency reasons like late night work shifts or for medical reasons. So the education office started running 24-hour emergency care centers at 7 locations last year. The first location was at Kupo, and they'd taken about 15 children, but because of its popularity, they've reached full capacity already. So they're in the works now to expand these centers to 30 locations by the end of this year to meet the needs of our parents.
Yes, that sounds like really great news, much needed. What are their hours of operation?
So it depends on the center, but it ranges from 6 to 10 p.m. or from 2 p.m. until midnight. So parents who have to use the centers, whether it's to help their children to do homework while they take care of business, have expressed high satisfaction with the safe and comfortable environment provided by these centers. And so it's good that they're feeling reassured that there's some place that they can entrust their kids in case of emergencies.
Right, and it's sometimes just, unexpected things come up. Or you're a single parent. It's really tough to manage it all. So I'm glad that we have this service available. And I hope that it spreads much more throughout our city. All right, let's move to our second insight.
So for our second insight, I sat down with the CEO and hanbok designer of 우리 옷, Ms. Younghae. Kat, when was the last time you wore hanbok?
I'm trying to remember. It was for an event here in Busan. It was a few years back.
I see.
And it was like some official event for the city. Yes, that was the last time. What about you?
Actually, I went through a phase of loving 생활 hanbok. So in New York, I actually wore a lot of them.
In New York?
Yeah, and people would love it.
Yes.
Well, I learned from Ms. Younghae that there's such a diverse range of hanboks, starting from birth. Babies wear pinetjogori, and there are different hanboks depending on the occasion, like weddings, ancestral rites, and the distinct styles exist for different social classes and seasons.
Yes.
It made me want to study about the different types of hanbok. Yeah.
And I love the fact that nowadays they have like the so-called like kind of traditional, old school styles.
Yes.
Versus also kind of the newer modern versions as well.
That's
There's
true.
a wide range. And of course the vibrant colors.
Definitely.
So beautiful.
Well, I spoke with Ms. Younghae just before Lunar New Year. So I asked her if there was any special hanbok that you wear on Lunar New Year. Let's have a listen.
저 같은 경우는 한복 디자이너니까 여러 가지 전통 한복에서부터 지금 생활하면서 입는 옷, 디자인 한복, 모든 한복을 이 평생을 많이 입었잖아요. 근데 지금 아무리 생각해도 지금 어릴 때 제가 그 어머니가 손수 지어서 색동저고리와 치마저고리를 만들어서 설빔으로 준비를 해주신 옷이 가장 기억에 남거든요. 또 가장 예뻤던 옷이었던 것 같아요. 그럼 이제 그 어머니가 농안에다가 이제 못 입게 하잖아요. 설날에 입으라고. 그럼 그 옷을 꺼내가 입어보고 만져보고 또 넣어놓고 그걸 수십 번을 하고.
So she shared that the most memorable one for her is the 색동저고리, the colorful jackets made by her mother as 설빔. During her childhood for Lunar New Year. So her mother would keep it in the closet so it would stay pristine and clean until New Year's Day, but she loved it so much that she would open the closet over and over again and just feel it and try it on. And back in the day, she said her staff and they were so busy around this time of the year because people were making 설빔 clothes for New Year's Day, but unfortunately that tradition is fading, so she said she misses those days. pieces.
With K culture, the wave, Hallyu, I wonder if there's more interest in the traditional hanbok all over the world?
Yes, actually, last year she was invited to showcase a fashion show at the Altarama fashion show in Italy, and the response was apparently amazing. She also pointed to a pivotal moment in 2022 when a photo of figure skater Kim Yeona, who was dressed in a hanbok that she designed, was up on a billboard in New York City Times Square.
That is a feather in the cap, as they say.
Right.
Amazing. And I also see hanbok with more kind of modern sensibilities.
That's right. So for our last clip, Ms. Lee Young-hye talks about her philosophy in creating new designs for hanbok these days. Let's have a listen.
저는 이제 디자인을 할 때 가장 중요하게 생각하는 거는 우리 한복의 원형을 고수하는 거거든요. 그 원형을 바탕으로 해서 디자인이 되어야지 아무리 멋진 디자인이라도 우리 한복의 구성 요소가 빠지고 뭐 디자인, 실루엣, 색감이 나타나지 않으면 한복이라 할 수가 없어요. 가장 한국적이게 만드는 게 우리 한복이 되어야 되고 요즘에는 이제 그 시대가 바뀌었으니까 저도 이제 많이 추구하는 게 청바지와 일반 양장하고 어떤 옷을 입어도 같이 입을 수 있는 아까 그 배사 같은 이런 옷, 그다음에 그 레이어드해서 입을 수 있는 아주 실용적인 옷, 현대적인 디자인으로 제가 제작을 많이 하는데요. 그러기 위해서는 이제 우리가 소재를 뭐 데님도 하기도 하고 뭐 면 같은 소재를 다양하게 이제 접목을 하죠.
So when designing, the most important thing she considers is to build upon the original form of hanbok. No matter how beautiful or creative the design may be, she says it can't be considered hanbok if it doesn't reflect the essential components like the silhouette, the color palette of the hanbok. Nowadays, she creates practical and modern designs that can be layered with regular clothing like jeans. To achieve this, she incorporates various materials like denim and cotton, which not only makes it comfortable to wear, but also stylish.
Oh.
Denim hanbok.
I know. I was just trying to imagine what it looks like, but what innovative ways to wear the traditional hanbok in a different way, in a whole new way. Yes.
And yes, I'm really glad that people like Ms. Lee Young-hye are spreading the beauty of hanbok around the world. And I don't know, we might be seeing some Hollywood actors down the line wearing hanbok on the red carpet, right?
Yes. Well, we look forward to that, more of that. But thank you so much for bringing two beautiful city insights to our listeners. And I love that letter to yourself. That was the best. That was like that. Well, we look forward to speaking to you next week as well. Thank you, Han.
All right, take care.
All right, everybody. This was City Insights. Oh, we have messages saying, how about this one? 봄 때 경주 나들이 가서 한복 입고 사진 찍어봐요. How does that sound? So let's take a field trip together. In our hanbok, that sounds good. All right. We are going to take a short song break before our special interview. This is it. Houdini by Dua Lipa.
Okay.
They say I come and I go. Tell me all
all the ways you need me. I'm not here for long. Catch me or I go Houdini. I come and I go. Prove you got the right to please me. Everybody knows. Catch me or I go Houdini. If you're good enough, you'll find a way. Maybe you could cause a girl to change. Do you think about it night and day? Maybe you could be the one to make me stay. Tell me all the ways you need me. I'm not here for long. Catch me or I go Houdini. I come and I go. Prove you got the right to please me. Everybody knows. Catch me or I go Houdini. Catch me or I go Houdini.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time for a special interview. We have seen cases here in Korea, stories highlighting political violence or violence that has been, I guess, perpetrated against, for example, Bae Hyun-jin, a former TV anchor turned conservative lawmaker. She was the target of a brutal assault by a 15-year-old assailant. And of course, that was just like a couple weeks after that high-profile attack on the Democratic Party leader, Representative Lee Jae-myung, as well. If you remember, he was stabbed in the neck by a knife-wielding person here in Busan. To help us maybe try to understand what's going on, we have Dr. Ben Tim Rich, who's a lecturer in international relations at Curtin University and the director of the Curtin Extremism Research Network. Let's say hi to him. Hi, thanks for joining our program today.
Good morning.
Yes. Can you help us define first what political violence is, and maybe you can share with us some notable historical cases that exemplify what this is?
Sure. So political violence is a very broad term. Most of your listeners are probably familiar with the term terrorism. That tends to be a perhaps extreme manifestation of political violence. But in the sort of broader sense, when we talk about political violence, we're talking about violence that is utilized to achieve a political outcome, rather than, say, violence that's used for self-aggrandizement in terms of criminality, or something related to mental illness. Examples, obviously, many of us are familiar with the 9/11 attacks in New York in 2011. We had the Christchurch shootings in 2019 in New Zealand that were executed by a white nationalist Australian there. Closer to home here in Australia, we've had anti-lockdown riots during the COVID sort of the peak of that over in Melbourne. So it manifests in a wide array of sort of outcomes, sometimes very, very targeted, very, very performative, other times more the kind of spontaneous rage and anger that come out of particular political conditions.
Thanks for explaining that. It does seem that there's been an uptick in such cases globally, but do you think this is just a perception that we have because we see more of it on the news feeds, or do you think that this is actually the case, that there are a higher number of such cases?
I think we certainly are more aware of it than in the past. I think, when we were operating with, 2 or 3 news networks with, 2 or 3 leading stories per day, a lot of this stuff probably was pretty invisible. However, I do think there is a slow growth of it, particularly in the developing world, and we've sort of been observing this over the last decade. A lot of it, I think, comes from the fact that many people don't think conditions are improving anymore. I think that there's a sense that the status quo is not serving many people anymore, and indeed it's serving a smaller and smaller number of people. And I think as a result of this, we see this growth in violence corresponding with a growth in political polarization, the election of candidates on either end of the spectrum that simply don't represent that sort of centrist centre of the status quo. That doesn't mean all of these candidates are, promoting violence, but that within that kind of milieu, when people no longer believe in the system, that a growing number of people think violence is a necessary key to achieve satisfactory change.
I see. Once consider maybe, action of radical kind of fringe groups, some experts seem to say that, this is becoming much more mainstream because we do see more of it, at least in the headlines on our social media feeds and whatnot. What do you say? Can you explain this?
Well, there's a lot of polling out of the United States, for example, that show people on both sides of the aisle, but particularly on the right, think that violence is a legitimate means by which their political agenda can be achieved. I think it doesn't help that we also have a media environment that is increasingly open or sort of making dog whistles towards the use of violence in places like Fox News, Sky News, etc. While they don't explicitly call for it, in our field, we talk about this notion of stochastic terrorism. That is when you create an environment where there's an increasing sense of tension and bombard people with it on a persistent basis, there's a greater likelihood that individuals or even groups are willing to use violence to achieve those ends because they feel there's this kind of crisis going on.
Well, I don't know. Is this kind of also a product of the fact that not just individuals like, for example, Donald Trump or more of the populist politicians or leaders out there that as they kind of made their presence known in the past few years, that there seems to have also been an uptick or at least a more awareness of, I guess, some right-wingers thinking it's okay to exhort to violence. Is there a link at all, or do you think that it's just coincidence?
No, I think there's a direct link between the statements of political elites, social, cultural elites, and the willingness of individuals to use violence and to undertake that. I don't think it's just on the right. I think we're entering an environment where the sort of that right-left binary doesn't work as effectively as possible when we use it. Certainly, the right is more willing to use violence, but it's not the case that it's just a single trajectory.
Right.
But I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of political capital which will be gained by drawing on these grievances in the population and blowing them up. We see this with figures like Trump. We also see it online with a lot of influencers who have basically built careers on creating tension, creating polarization, and again, not directly calling for violence, but creating an environment in which violence is more likely to occur.
And do you think that this trend is maybe specific to certain countries, or is there a general global trend as well?
I think it manifests more intensely in certain countries. Certainly the US is, all eyes are on at the moment, but obviously, as you noted at the start of the program, we've seen this manifest in Korea. We saw it manifest last year, I believe, in Japan with the assassination of Shinzo Abe. It's happening all over the place, but to different degrees to different countries. And a lot of that comes down to the individual conditions in those different countries.
And do you think that this type of trend poses risks to democracy overall, the democratic government, whether they be young or old, respectively? Any risk?
Certainly. Obviously, it undermines the democratic process itself. But oftentimes, the thing that concerns me as a scholar of this field is the state's response to it and how state responses to cracking down on this type of violence or claiming to be cracking down on this type of violence can lead to all sorts of anti-democratic outcomes. We can just look at the United States post 9/11, look at things like the Patriot Act, surveillance of the people. Here in Australia, we are intensely authoritarian in many ways, justified through our counter-terrorism activities. And so I think there's a sort of issue on both sides where both the challenge of the violence itself to the democratic process, but also the state's response.
Well, at the forefront, as I was describing what's happening here in Korea recently, is it likely that such occurrences, whether it's in Korea or anywhere else, that when there are such high-profile stories, cases where there are violent attacks, that this will lead to, for example, copycat crimes, that it might happen more frequently or anything along those lines?
Unfortunately, part of the logic that goes into these attacks are to inspire further ones. So you can see this in many manifestos. The Christchurch shooter that I mentioned earlier from 2019 specifically rationalised his actions as a call to arms to his fellow white nationalists. And so, yeah, definitely, I think there's a potential. Once people are shown that this is possible, there's always a greater likelihood that other peoples will kind of take up the call of the particular attacker moving forward and be inspired by them.
And so as we wrap up our discussion today, Dr. Ridge, how can we as people, individuals, and also just as society overall effectively address political violence and, basically safeguard democracy?
Well, it's a very broad question as a wrap-up, but one of the things we focus on in our little team here in Perth is looking at how do we find people who are becoming particularly isolated and falling down these sort of radicalisation trajectories. Now, this is particularly the case for lone wolves, but oftentimes what you see when you read the biography of lone wolf actor terrorists is that they go through a process where they slowly disengage from society and where their views become more and more extreme. And oftentimes, one of the ways that potentially that could be averted is if people in their life, family, et cetera, reached out in an empathetic way to try and kind of find out what is driving that wedge between them and mainstream society and provide them the support they need to come back into the fold.
I see. Well, as we try to grapple with what's been happening here, thank you so much for shedding light on this very important issue. Thanks for joining us today. We do appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you.
This was Dr. Ben Timrich, and we talked about political violence. It is not something that is obviously just happening in Korea. All over the world, it does happen. And as we look upon ourselves and upon society to see why this is happening, probably more questions than answers, but nonetheless, discussions that, we need to have. Anyhow, that was your special interview, and I'll be back in just a moment.
Small businesses are the engine of the local economy, and the Korea Broadcast Advertising Corporation, KOBACO, provides financial support for these small businesses to create and broadcast on-air advertisements. Businesses can get up to 9 million won, and applications are open from January 29th to February 22nd at 4 p.m. For details, please visit kobaco.co.kr. We ask for your participation and interest from small business owners.
한국방송광고진흥공사에서는 지역 경제 원동력인 소상공인을 대상으로 방송 광고 제작비와 송출비를 지원하고 있습니다. 최대 900만 원까지 지원 가능하며 신청 기간은 1월 29일부터 2월 22일 오후 4시까지입니다. 자세한 사항은 코바코 홈페이지를 참조하시기 바랍니다. 관심 있는 소상공인 여러분의 많은 참여 바랍니다.
All right, listeners, I'm going to round things out by reading a few more of your messages. Remember, we've been talking about what you would tell your younger self. We have 지원ning who says, 10년 전 지원아, 더 많이 놀고 여행도 많이 다녀라. That's what she or they would apparently say. That's one thing I also regret, not traveling enough when I was younger. Had opportunities to do so. My dad told me to go travel, go see the world. But there was a caveat. It was to take my younger sister. And my sister, she mentions this like almost every day these days. She's like, Anni, why didn't you say yes to that trip? And I tell her, so sorry. Had I known, what I know now, I would have definitely taken that trip with her. So I apologize to my sister officially on air. Another message, a super party pooper waiver says, love your handle, by the way. I say it every time. Good morning, y'all. I would talk to my younger me like, do whatever you want and do more. No regrets. What I had done at the time. So far, I'm doing good. Such high self-esteem, they say. But you know what? What's wrong with high self-esteem? I think go for it. All right, Umberto says, I will tell myself, keep doing exactly what you are doing. The future is very, very bright. Ooh. So apparently you were doing things right in your mind. One more, Pek Juhyun waiver. I'd like to saddle the wind and ride to wherever you are. I'm here in Pyeongtaek. Well, thank you for listening from all the way there. I do appreciate it. And of course, all of you, the other messages that I didn't get a chance to read as well. Thanks for chiming in and tuning in today. Morning Wave in Busan. Our producer is Choi Yun-jin. We have 3 writers, Haley Seo, Esther Jung, Na-won Yoon. They always do such fabulous work behind the scenes. And I'm your host, Catherine. I'll be back to do it all over again tomorrow. How about this one to take us out? Little by Little by Oasis. So have a wonderful Thursday, everybody. Bye-bye.
Don't claim to be perfect, but we're free. We dream our dreams alone with no resistance.